The sun hung low in the sky, a pale orb smothered by a haze of ash and dust, casting elongated shadows across the crumbling remnants of what once was a bustling city. The air was thick with the scent of rust and decay, mingling with the sharp tang of forgotten dreams. Peregrine moved cautiously through the desolate streets, their tattered leather jacket flapping against their slender frame like a frayed flag of defiance. Around them, the skeletal remains of buildings leaned precariously, their shattered windows gaping like unblinking eyes, witnesses to a society that had imploded. Each step echoed a testament to survival, sending a shiver through the silence, as if the world itself recoiled from the weight of their presence. A sharp clatter broke the stillness, and Peregrine froze, instinctively reaching for the worn strap of their sachet. Up ahead, a fig emerged from behind a rust-tad car, a scavenger, with sunken cheeks and a wild gaze. The man's fingers twitched as he eyed Peregrine, something predatory in his stance. "You lost, journalist," he sneered, branding a jagged piece of metal like a makeshift weapon. The threat hung heavy in the air, electrifying the moment. With a steadying breath, Peregrine tightened their grip on the sachet, the rough fabric grounding them. "Just passing through," they replied, voice steady, drawing strength from the truth they carried within. The scavengers stepped closer, the smell of sweat and desperation which farting off in waves. "You think you're safe, You're just another ghost in this graveyard," he spat, the disdain dripping from his words. But Peregrine's resolve hardened. They had seen too much, felt the pulse of injustice thrumming under this wreckage. "I'm not entered haunt," they countered, taking a small step forward, using the weight of their determination to anchor their voice. A moment passed, a taut wire of tension before the scavenger, perhaps sensing the fire behind their heads' eyes, snorted dismissively and retreated into the shadows of the debris, leaving only the echo of his footsteps to linger in the air. With the danger receding, Peregrine resumed their journey, heart thudding in rhythm with the staccato of their breath. They paused at the mouth of an alley, scribbling notes on a scrap of paper with a pen that felt like a lifeline in this wasteland of memories. Each word was a step toward understanding, a thread to weave back the fractured tapestry of truth hidden beneath layers of despair. Ahead, the forgotten library loomed, its crumbling facade promising secrets long buried. As they approached, a chill crept down their spine. This was a place where echoes of the past whispered, had they hoped to find the clarity they sought, or perhaps face the ghosts that awaited them within. The air within the underground tunnel clung to Peregrine like a damp shroud, stagnant and faintly tinged with the metallic scent of earth and stone. Flickering shadows danced against the rough-hewn walls, cast by the wan light of a silly lantern that swung from the low ceiling, illuminating the jagged path ahead. Each step echoed softly, a muffled heartbeat in the cavernous silence, broken only by the distant murmur of whispers that sent a shiver skittering down Peregrine's spine. Their heart raced, a blend of trepidation and anticipation igniting a fire in their chest. Clad in their tattered leather jacket, they pressed forward, the weight of their sachets pulling at them. They descended deeper into the darkness, driven by a mix of curiosity and a duty to uncover the truth lurking in the unseen corners of their world. The whispers grew louder, weaving through the air like a melody composed of urgency and secrets. Peregrine paused, their haggard eyes narrowing as they caught sight of a faint glow emanating from a concealed chamber just off the tunnel. Curiosity gnawed at them, pushing aside the instinct to retreat. As they peered down the corner, the sight before them stole their breath. A group of thieves huddled around piles of glimmering ore, the dull shimmer betraying the treasures meant for their family legacy. Anger surged within them, hot and visceral, as they caught snippets of conversation, phrases laced with ancient prophecies that tugged at the edges of familial memory.
This or...
The key to unlocking the past, one thief said, his voice a low rasp, barely concealing the greed that crackled beneath his words. We'll control the balance, no one will stand in our way. Peregrine's heart thundered in their chest, each beat a reminder of what was at stake. The very essence of their heritage lay trapped in the hands of these criminals, a fragile thread threatening to snap under the weight of greed and ambition. They felt the jagged scar on their eyebrow throb as if resonating with their inner turmoil, tethering them to a past they couldn't forsake. Peregrine shifted slightly, the rough stone pressing against their back as they strained closer to catch every word. Fear coiled in their stomach, but along with it came determination. They had to act. Glancing in, they spotted a rusted pipe just within reach that could serve as an impromptu weapon. The thieves were too absorbed in their schemes to notice the slight figure lurking in the shadows. Gathering every ounce of courage, Peregrine gripped the cool metal, feeling its weight settle into their palm like a promise of resolve. They had spent their life fighting for truth, and now was the time to stand against the very darkness that sought to consume it. With this sudden surge of boldness, Peregrine stepped from the shadows, the lantern flickering light revealing their presence. "Stop. You don't know what you're tampering with." Their voice rang out, cracking slightly under the weight of their own fear. The thieves turned, surprise morphing into a predatory glint in their eyes as they assessed the intruder. The moment hung heavy in the air, thick with tension, as the path to confrontation loomed before them. The prophecy whispered of dire consequences, and Peregrine was ready to face whatever lay ahead to protect their family legacy. In that dimly lit chamber, the atmosphere shifted, thickening with dread and uncertainty. The thieves exchanged a knowing glance, a flicker of recognition crossing their faces, as if they had underestimated the resolve of this slender riddler before them. "You think you can stand against us?" One sneered, branding a dagger that caught the light like a glinting promise of violence. But beneath the weight of their fear, Peregrine felt a thrill of defiance. It was no longer merely about stolen ore. It was a battle for their identity, their home, and the truth that shimmered just out of reach. As they squared their shoulders, ready to confront the chaos that threatened to engulf them, a sad thought crystallized in their mind. They would walk away empty-handed. Not today. The dim glow of a flickering overhead light cast a pallid hue over the cluttered news office, where papers whispered secrets of stories long gone. Old photographs, ink-stained notes, and empty coffee mugs formed a chaotic but familiar landscape, an unholy blend of urgency and nostalgia. Peregrine entered the narrow aisles, their boots scuffing against the faded floorboards, a rhythm punctuated by the distant et of a siren outside. Each step stirred the musty scent of paper and dust, a reminder of the truths buried beneath the weight of inaction. They could feel the jagged scar above their eyebrow throb in time with their racing heart, a physical manifestation of the turmoil brewing within. Outside, life continued in the wasteland, but inside these walls, the air crackled with the electric tension of impending change. Jareth Paxwood, their mentor, leaned back in a weatherette chair, fingers steepled against his chin, observing Peregrine with a gaze that held both concern and wisdom. The shadows deepened under his brow as he finally broke the silence. "You know, you can't sit here forever, hoping the truth will reveal itself. Sometimes you have to go out and unearth it yourself. The world isn't kind to those who hesitate." His voice was gravelly yet warm, carrying the weight of years and chasing shadows for the sake of illumination. Peregrine halted, their breath catching in their throat. Giant words hung in the air like a live wire, sparking a ferocious resolve. They clenched their fists, feeling the edges of their tattoo dig into their skin. But what if I expose something worse? What if the thieves are more dangerous than I handle? The question emerged with an anxious tremor, echoing the fear gnawing at their resolve. Yet, beneath the tepidity lay the burning ember of their familial legacy, the connection to the stolen ore that had driven them thus far. Fear is his weight that could break you or free you, Peregrine, Jad replied, his voice steady as he pushed himself to his feet. He moved low, the scent of old leather and ink enveloping them like a comforting shroud. You must decide if the truth is worth that weight. Every story carries risk, but the ones that matter the most often come with great peril. Remember why you started this. You're not just fighting for a story, you're fighting for your community future. The fervor ignited by Jareth's words coursed through Peregrine like fire, burning away the last remnants of doubt. They nodded, a determined glint sparking in their hazed eyes as they turned toward the scattered notes that lay like breadcrumbs lead to the truth. Then I'll confront them directly. I have to know what they've done with the ore, and I won't let fear silence me anymore. I owe it to everyone who suffered because of this. The words tumbled from their lips, a vow forged in the flames of conviction. With the newfound clarity, Peregrine read their notes, the crinkling paper a comforting sound as they slid everything into their sachet. The weight felt different now, no longer a burden but a promise to uphold. Jet, an approving nod, anchored their resolve, and they exchanged a glance that spoke volumes, understanding, respect, and an unspoken support. The office, once a sanctuary of doubt, now surged with purpose. As Peregrine stepped toward the door, a plan forming in their mind, they realized that the path ahead would be fraught with danger, but every step was necessary. Out there in the wasteland, truth awaited, and it would be easily uncovered. The soft glow of a Ville desk lamp bathed that Peregrine modest apartment in a warm amber light, contrasting sharply with the chaos that surrounded them. Scattered across the floor were papers, frayed edges curling like autumn leaves, notes scribbled in hasty handwriting, and photographs pinned with fraying tape. Testaments to a quest that felt increasingly insurmountable. The scent of stale coffee mingled with dust, creating a heavy atmosphere that pressed against their chest. As they sat, elbows resting on their knees, Peregrine ran a hand through their unruly dark brown hair, feeling the familiar jagged scar on their eyebrow throb with the weight of unmade decisions. In the corner, the shadows seemed to gather in silent judgment, whispering doubts that echoed louder than the distant sounds of a city that never slept. Within this cluttered heaven of inquiry, the burden of truth loomed larger than ever. It's not just about the truth, Peregrine, Jareth Paxwood said, his voice low and steady as he surveyed the chaotic landscape of notes strewn about the apartment. The wise mentor leaned back in a wooden chair that creaked under the pressure of his presence, the heavy fabric of his jacket absorbing the dim light. Consider the consequences. Unraveling this thread could tear apart lives. You have a friend out there, someone who might bear the brunt of your revelations. Peregrine's gaze fell to a photograph of a smiling figure, a friend lost in the murky depths of the wasteland despair. The implications coiled tightly in their gut like a spring, ready to snap. In a moment of silence, the only sounds were the rustle of paper and the faint hum of the city aid, reminders of the lives that thrived beyond these walls. But what if silence allows greater harm to fester? Peregrine's voice trembled, torn between the need for truth and the instinct to protect. They stood up, abruptly, pacing the small space, feeling the coolness of the floor against their bare feet. With each step, they grappled with the weight of their choices, the tension palpable. The room seemed to shrink around them, the air thick with uncertainty. Jad watched, his eyes softening with understanding. Every path you choose carries a weight, but that doesn't mean you must carry it alone. Sometimes, the light you seek is hidden in the dark, waiting for you to reach it. You can protect your friend and seek the truth towards Restaurer Bitiobetiksen. You're more capable than you are, Peregra. His words, wrapped around them like a warm blanket, igniting a flicker of hope that pushed back against the shadows. Peregros halted their restless pacing, a sense of purpose igniting within as they realized that perhaps, in their quest for truth, there was still room for compassion. As Peregras sank back into their chair, surrounded by the chaos they had created, they took a deep breath, feeling the glimmer of possibility. The threads of their two worlds didn't have to be severed. Perhaps they could weave them together instead. But the question loomed like a specter: would the truth truly set them free, or would it ensnare them in a web of consequences they couldn't yet foresee? The night felt darker, yet somehow more alive, as they prepared to step into the uncertainty ahead. With the flick of their wrist, they read the scattered notes, sorting through the chaos with renewed determination. Each piece of paper became a potential lifeline, a bridge between their friend's safety and the truth that lingered just out of reach. The faint glow of dawn began to creep through the window, casting long shadows that danced across the floor like ghostly figures urging them forward. "You're right, Jaff," Peregrai murmured, their voice steadier now, the flicker of hope igniting into a steady flame. "I'll find a way to protect them and uncover the truth. But first, I need to turn this chaos into clarity." As the first rays of light broke through the darkness, so too did the resolve within them. A promise to face the tangled path ahead, no matter how treacherous. The alley behind the town hall was a realm of shadows, the narrow passage barely illuminated by the flickering light of a thin overhead bulb, its glow struggling against the encroaching darkness. The scent of damp asphalt mingled with the faint aroma of stale cigarettes, and the distant murmur of the town heartbeat faded into an unsettling silence. Peregro Clervion, slender and athletic, emerged from the gloom, their heart racing beneath the worn leather of their jacket. In one end, they clutched a voice recorder, its metallic surface cold against their palm, while a notepad filled with hastily scrawled notes fluttered with each determined step. With shoulder-length dark brown hair tousled by the night breeze, and hazel eyes glinting with resolve, they approached a huddled group of informants, their breath visible in the chilled air, tension swirling like mist on them. Peregro, Fulcogud, deep breath, gathering their courage as they neared the group, who stood, shoulder to shoulder, faces darkened by the shadows. "I know you scared, but if we don't speak up about what's happening, it'll only get worse," they urged, their voice steady yet tinged with urgency. The informants exchanged anxious glances, their eyes darting away, as if the mere act of acknowledgement might seal their fate. One, a wiry man with a nervous twitch, finally broke the silence, shaking his head sharply. "You don't understand. It's not just talk. People who asked too many questions, they disappear." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, thickening the atmosphere like the damp fog that clung to the alley walls. A chill crept down Peregrine's spine, not just from the cold, but from the vivid image of the threat he implied. "I'm not asking you to throw yourselves into the fire. Just tell me what you know, even a little. We could fight this together," they pressed, attempting to weave hope into the fabric of fear around them. But the crowd remained silent, the weight of their shared anxiety building like a storm cloud overhead. Just then, a low chuckle echoed through the alley, slicing through the tension like a blade. Jet Paxwood, the corrupt official who had eluded justice for too long, stepped into the dim light, his presence a dark shadow that loomed larger than life. "And what do we have, Heb? A little journalist playing hero. His smile was a serpentine curl, dangerous and mocking. You think you can rally these rats against me? Let me remind you, paragraph stitches always get stitched up. Do you want to test my patience? The threat hung in the air like a noose, and Peregrine resolve waver, heart pounded with the weight of Jareth words. Yet, somewhere beneath the fear, a flicker of defiance ignited. They could feel the weight of the notepad in their pocket, the story's yearning to escape, and the necessity of uncovering the truth burned brighter than the fear of consequences. Jareth's eyes glinted with a promise of retribution, but Peregrine clenched their fists, determination coursing through their veins. They would back down. Not now. The alley might be cloaked in darkness, but they could still find a way to shine a light on the truth. The town square buzzed with an uneasy energy, the air thick with the mingling scents of baked bread, and the metallic tang of anxiety. The cobblestones, worn smooth by years of foot traffic, glistened under the afternoon sun, but the brightness did little to dispel the shadows lurking in the corners. Peregrine Quillon stepped onto a low stone platform, their heart pounding a distant drum. Clad in a tattered leather jacket, they clutched a handful of crumpled notes, fingers trembling slightly. Around them, wary residents cast furtive glances at the enforcers stationed at the edge of the square, their sharp uniforms cutting a striking contrast against the drab buildings. The small crowd shifted uneasily, the murmurs of doubt grow louder with each passing second, but Dick neither once. But Peregrine prepared to address the heart of the community, a spark of hope still flickering amid the fear. We can no longer stand by while our livelihoods are trampled upon. Peregrine's voice rang out, steadying themselves against the weight of the stairs. Every day, we witness the erosion of our freedoms, our heritage. They paused, catching a glimpse of Jareth Paxwood enforcers, their arms crossed and smirks widening like dark crescents. A shiver crawled down Peregrine's spine, but they pressed on, eyes blazing.
If we unite, we can reclaim what has been taken.
We could fight against this tyranny. A few heads nodded, but for every nod, there were two reluctant shakes. From the back, a woman stepped forward, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. And what of our families? What of the consequences? She whispered, her voice breaking the tension like a fragile thread. The crowd shifted again, glancing down at their feet, as if the cobblestones might shield them from the scrutiny of the enforcers. Peregrine's heart sank. Fear was a potent force, one that gnawed away at their resolve. You think Jaff will hold back if we rise? Another voice chimed in, gruff and edged with skepticism. The man stepped into view, arms crossed defiantly.
Will crush us.
Look at them, lurking there like fletchers.
Will only make things worse. We're just in what? The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of truth and trepidation. Peregrine clenched their fists, the crumpled notes crumpling further under the pressure, frustration sparking in their hazed eyes. But if we do nothing, we will lose everything. Our very essence is at stake. Silence fell, punctuated only by a distant cry of a gull overhead, circling like the moods of the crowd. One by one, the residents began to back way, casting furtive glances back at the enforcers, who stood with an air of victorious indifference. The smirks on their faces deepened, as Peregrine's voice faltered. The once bustling square now felt like a stage stripped of its audience, and the weight of isolation pressed heavily on their shoulders. With every step, the townsfolk took back. Peregrine felt the flicker of hope within them, dim, replaced by an overwhelming sense of abandonment, the echoes of their passionate plea swallowed by the encroaching dread. Closing paragraphs. As the last of the crowd melted away, shadows closing in on the edges of the square, Peregrine remained rooted in place, the remnants of their resolve crumbling like the decaying walls of the forgotten library. The smirks of the enforcers were no longer mere taunts. They were a promise of the isolation to come, a symbol of the fight against fear that now felt impossibly steep. With a trembling breath, Peregrine pulled the notes back against their chest, determination still simmering beneath the surface. In the depths of despair, a flicker of an idea ignited in their mind. If the townsfolk would unite, perhaps it was time to seek allies elsewhere. The next steps would be crucial. After all, the truth was a powerful weapon, and they were not done fighting yet. The walls of Jadath Paxwood office gleamed with gold accents, reflecting the opulence that dripped from every corner of the room like rich honey. A grand chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the heavy mahogany desk, which was littered with documents of dubious origin. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cigars and polished leather, mingling uncomfortably with the sharp tang of anxiety that underpinned Peregrine Queen's heart. They stood by the door, wearing a crisp white shirt tucked into tailored trousers, the guise of a new aide meticulously crafted to blend in among the polished elite. But beneath the disguise, a tempest brewed. This was not merely a mission, it was a reckoning, and the stakes had never been higher. Peregrine's hands trembled slightly as they jotted down the hushed conversation swirling around the room like smoke. Jad stood at the helm, commanding the attention of his inner circle with an easy charisma that belied the malevolence underlying his words. "We must accelerate the timeline for the extraction of the ore. If the townsfolk catch wind of our plans, we could lose everything," he warned, his voice smooth yet laced with an undercurrent of urgency. Peregrine's heart raced. The very information they had come to uncover was being laid bare. But they needed more. To know the full extent of the corruption that had cost them so dearly. The others rolled the table, nodded, some taking notes, others exchanging glances, filled with unspoken agreement. One man, a hooking figure with a scar that mirrored Peregrine's, leaned forward, tapping his finger against the table. "And what if that journalist is still breathing down our necks?"
We can't afford loose ends, Jack.
"You know that?" The implication hung heavy in the air, and Peregrine swallowed hard, their pulse quickening as they sensed the tide shifting dangerously close to their position. Just as they began to write frantically, the tension snapped when the door swung open and a newcomer entered. A striking woman with sharp features and an air of authority that sent a jolt through the room. Peregrine froze, instinctively glancing toward the exit, their instincts screaming for escape. They had to stay vigilant, but fear clawed at their insides.
"Yeah."
"You're not one of us," she exclaimed, her eyes narrowing on Peregrine's. The world them faded, heart racing as an impending chaos threatened to swallow them whole. In a heartbeat, the facade shattered. Voices erupted, rising in anger and confusion, drowning out the careful orchestration of deceit. Peregrine bolted for the back exit, adrenaline surging when they pushed through the heavy oak door. The muffled sounds of chaos trailing behind them, big echoes in a canyon. They stumbled into the cool night air, the scent of damp earth and distant rain flooding their senses. Alone and shaken, they leaned against the rough brick wall, heart hammering against their ribs. The information they sought slipped through their fingers like grains of sand. But this was just the beginning. The dance of shadows had only just begun, and Peregrine would rest until the truth was uncovered. The apartment was a cacophony of chaos, an intricate tapestry woven from the threads of scattered papers, crumpled notes, and half-empty coffee cups that bore witness to Peregrine Queen's relentless pursuit of truth. Dim light flickered from a lone bulb hanging crookedly in the corner, casting long shadows that danced across the walls, where remnants of posters and photographs threatened to peel away from the peeling paint. The air hung heavy with the scent of ink and anxiety, a palpable tension that wrapped round them like a damp shroud. As they sat on the edge of a couch that had seen better days, their fingers traced the jagged scar on their left eyebrow, a reminder of battles fought and the moral crossroads that loomed ahead, threatening to engulf them in uncertainty. What if exposing them puts the very people I want to protect in danger? Peregrine whispered, their voice barely breaking the silence. They leaned forward, elbows on knees, the weight of their decision pressing heavily on their shoulders. The papers round them seemed to shift, as if alive with the tension of unspoken truths. Each name scribbled on those sheets felt like a ghost haunting their mind, a reminder of the risk that lay ahead. They closed their eyes, visions of shattered lives haunting their thoughts, pushing the boundaries of what it meant to be a journalist, an ethical seeker of truth. The door creaked open, and Jaff Paxwood stepped inside, a gentle presence in the storm of Peregrine turmoil. The mentor's silver hair caught the dim light, framing a face etched with wisdom and warmth. "You wear your burden neck a cloak, Peregrine," he said, his voice rich and steady, cutting through the suffocating air. He walked over to the coffee table, carefully avoiding the flurry of documents, and knelt beside them, his gaze steady and reassuring. "Sometimes the truth is a double-edged sword, but it the weapon we have to fight against the shadows." Peregrine met Jareth's gaze, the flicker of hope igniting a spark within them. "But what if my truth causes more harm than good? How do I choose when the stakes are so high?" The words spilled out, raw and unfiltered. Jareth's expression softened, his hand resting on Peregrine's shoulder, a grounding force. "Every choice we make carries weight, but running from your fears only lets them grow. Face them, and you may find that the light, however faint, can guide you through the darkness." Their mentor words resonated, a pathway illuminated amidst the encroaching doubt, but the specter of fear still loomed large around them, a cruel reminder of the choices yet to be made. As Jareth's hand lingered, Peregrine felt the warmth seep into their chilled resolve, a flicker of clarity beginning to cut through the fog of uncertainty. The room, once a prison of indecision, now felt like a sanctuary of potential. They breathed deeply, the scent of ink mixing with the faint aroma of Jareth cologne, grounding them in the moment. "I need to confront them," Peregrine said, the words tasting foreign and exhilarating on their tongue. "I have to face the truth, no matter what it costs." The mentor nodded, a flicker of pride in his eyes. But to Peregrine's heart raced with newfound determination. A chilling thought crept in. Was seeking justice worth the price of innocence? The shadows of consequence loomed larger, whispering their doubts as they prepared to step into the uncertain light. The forgotten library of prophecies loomed like a specter amid the crumbling remains of a town long lost to time, its weather facade cloaked in creeping vines and shadows. Dust motes danced in the sparse beams of light that filtered through fractured windows, illuminating the rich, aged wood of the shelves that sagged under the weight of forgotten knowledge. Each tome held whispers of ancient truths, their spines cracked and faded, bearing witness to the passage of centuries. Peregrine Clojon, slender and alert, brushed a hand across a shelf, feeling the cold, dusty texture of leather-bound books. The air was thick with the musky scent of decay, mingling with the faintest hint of damp earth. They ventured deeper into the library, a flicker of resolve igniting within them. The promise of revelation thrummed in the silence, beckoning them further into the heart of this forgotten sanctuary. As Peregrine combed through the endless rows of texts, their fingers gray as over the brittle pages, each word a siren song of lost secrets. Suddenly, a particular scroll caught their eye, its edges frayed yet vibrant with a sense of urgency. They unrolled it gingerly, the parchment crackling in the stillness. The words leapt off the page, speaking of a hidden truth capable of dismantling the stranglehold of power that had suffocated their community for far too long. With each line, their heart raced, the weight of the prophecy settling into their bones, igniting a fire that spurred them forward. "This could change everything," they murmured, breathless, barely aware of the soft footsteps behind them. Jad Paxwood, their mentor, stepped close, the air thickening with unspoken encouragement. "It is not just words on a page, Peregro. It is a call to action, a beacon in the darkness. But you must decide how to wield it." His voice was steady, laced with the wisdom of years spent in the shadows of power. Peregros turned, their gaze searching Jared's face for the unwavering support they had come to rely on. "But what if? What if I fail? What if this truth brings more pain?" The uncertainty flickered in their haggard eyes, betraying the conflict between their burning desire for justice and the fear of consequences. With a gentle hand, Jath placed his palm against Peregrine's shoulder, grounding them. "Then you learn, and you rise. You have the strength to face your fears. Remember, the cost of inaction is far greater than the risk of failure." His words wrapped around Peregrine like a protective cloak, bolstering their resolve. They inhaled deeply, allowing the scent of the library, a mix of dust and ancient stories, to fill their lungs. The flicker of determination began to swell within, igniting a flame that could not be ignored. "You're right. I can't let fear dictate my choices any longer." The revelation crackled in the silence, and a shared understanding passed between them like lightning. The library seemed to pulse with energy, as if the very walls recognized the shift within Peregrine. They folded the scroll carefully, tucking it into the sachet that had grown heavy with purpose. Jeff nodded, pride swelling in his chest. Yet, as they stepped toward the door, a sudden uncertainty lingered, a reminder that the shadows were not done closing in. What awaited them? Toud could shift the balance between hope and despair once more. As the door creaked open, the sounds of the world outside rushed in, a cacophony of distant shouts and the rustle of leaves, a stark contrast to the suffocating silence of the library. Peregrine paused, heart thrumming in their chest. The scroll weighed a constant reminder of the truth now cradled within their grasp. The path ahead was littered with potential danger, but an unquenchable fire burned in their veins, mingling with the haunting echoes of the past. They exchanged a determined glance with JF, knowing that this was only the beginning. With every step into the light, the stakes rose higher. Would they have the strength to face what lay ahead, or would the shadows of consequence entrap them once more? The answer awaited just beyond the threshold, a chilling promise of a confrontation that would test the very fabric of their resolve. Perched high above the desolate expanse of the wasteland, the abandoned lookout point stood as a forgotten sentinel, its weather-beaten structure fading into the twilight. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground like the bones of some ancient creature, while the air carried the acrid scent of rust and decay. Dark clouds loomed overhead, casting a foreboding shadow over the horizon, where the remnants of civilization clung precariously to existence. Peregrine Cleon stood at the edge, their slender frames silhouetted against the dimming sky, the weight of recent discoveries pressing heavily upon their shoulders. A tattered leather jacket fluttered in the breeze, the jagged scar on their brow catching the last flickers of light. The wasteland, a desolate reflection of their troubled mind, beckoned them to confront the truths they had unearthed. Peregrine, Heart raced as they leaned against the cold stone of the lookout, the rough texture biting into their skin. Below, the landscape sprawled out like a brutal tapestry, scorched earth litter with the relics of a world that had succumbed to greed. Each breath was heavy with hesitation.
What if I speak out?
What if I don't? The unvoiced thoughts spiraled within, intertwining with memories of lost loved ones. It was in this very silence that the echoes of doubt grew louder, threatening to drown out the truth they so desperately sought to reveal. They flexed their fingers, ran the quill tattoo on their wrist, a reminder of their lineage, of the journalistic legacy they were determined to uphold. A sudden gust of wind rustled through the brittle grass, and Peregrine shivered, not just from the chill, but from the gnawing realization that their actions would have consequences far beyond their own life. The faces of their neighbors flickered in their mind, hopeful, fearful, and oblivious to the corruption festering like an untreated wound. People deserve to know, even if it shatters the fragile peace we cling to. They murmured to the void, the sound of their voice almost lost amidst the throlling wind. Yet, within the chaotic tempest of thoughts, a flicker of resolve ignited, urging them toward a decision they could no longer postpone. They can't stay in the dark forever, Peregrine thought, a fiery determination surging through them. Their fingers brushed the well-worn notebooks in their sachet, filled with evidence and truths that could dismantle the very foundations of their community ignorance. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced at their feet, doubt seeped in once more. What if my revelation leads to more pain than relief? The air felt heavy, each moment stretching like the winding road before them, uncertain and fraught with peril. Still they inhaled deeply, the bracing scent of earth and metal pacifying their spirits, whispering promises of strength as the last rays of daylight slipped away. With the weight of their discoveries anchoring their resolve, Peregrine took a step back from the precipice, heart thrumming in synchrony with the chaotic rhythm of the world below. The choice was no longer about silence or truth, it was about the ripples that truth would create. They straightened, squaring their shoulders against the gathering darkness. The stakes had never been higher, yet something deep inside felt undeniably right. It's time to confront the shadows, even if it means standing alone. The horizon loomed ahead, the path fraught with uncertainty, but they were ready to embrace the storm. As the first stars began to pierce the deepening veil of night, illuminating the wasteland with a muted glow, Peregrine turned their gaze back toward the twisted remnants of their community. The quiet urge to hide dissipated like mist under the weight of resolve, replaced by a fierce clarity. They knew with a certainty that eclipse up their fears, that the coming dawn would only bring light, but the possibility of upheaval. It was time to gather the courage to share their truth, to rattle the cages of complacency that held their neighbors captive. With a final glance over the edge, Peregrine whispered a silent promise to the winds. They would let fear dictate their choices any longer. Their journey was just beginning, and the stakes, both personal and communal, had never been higher. The underground tunnel, a narrow vein carved through the earth, exhaled a damp, earthy scent that clung to the skin like an unwelcome embrace. Shadows danced along rough stone walls, illuminated by flickering torches, their flames casting elongated silhouettes of the weary souls within. Peregrine stood at the tunnel app, their haggard eyes reflecting a turbulent mix of resolve and anxiety. Huddled close to the flickering light, a ragtag assembly of allies, each bearing the weight of betrayal, lean in with urgent whispers. Jareth Paxwood, his brow furrowed with determination, brandished a map stained by time and secrets, while Elara, her fierce gaze unwavering, gripped Peregrine's shoulder as if to steady their hearts. This was a crucible of hope and fear, where the truth had to unfurl its wings amidst the shadows they dared to confront. We can't waste any time, Perograi, Jurade urged, his voice low yet insistent. The map crackled softly in his grip, the lines tracing paths they had all memorized through sleepless nights. The longer we wait, the tighter they'll clutch the lies. We know what they did to the ore. The people deserve to know. A tremor of uncertainty flickered through Peregrine's chest, but they nodded, feeling the weight of their allies' expectant gazes. Each face was etched with stories of loss and anger, unyielding as the stone around them. They took a breath, a mixture of dread and determination, coiling within them like the tendrils of smoke from the torches. What if they retaliate? Peregrine's voice was barely a whisper, yet it bore the burden of countless sleepless nights. Their fingers brushed over the rough texture of their jacket, seeking comfort in its familiar weight. Elora stepped close, her voice soothing. If we don't act, we allow their deceit to fester. Remember your promise to your family? This is more than just us. This is for every soul they've harmed. The firelight caught the glimmer of hope in her eyes, igniting a flicker of courage within Peregrine. The atmosphere thickened with tension, every heartbeat echoing in the confined space. Jad leaned forward, his features illuminated like a warrior ready for battle. We need a clan. Would gather the townsfolk and expose the truth. We have allies. We can't let fear bind us, be chains. We'll show them the strength of our unity. With each word, the embers of resolve stoked higher within the group, bridging their individual fears into a collective drive. They huddled so, their breaths mingling in the cold air, each whisper carving a path toward the light beyond the tunnel. Peregrine met Javhanna's unwavering gaze, feeling the resolute pulse of their allies surrounding them. But if we're caught, the thought hung heavy, a specter of doubt. The wise mentor, an elder figure with silver-streaked hair, placed a hand on Peregrine's shoulder, grounding them. The truth is flame that cannot be extinguished. You hold it within you. Your courage will ignite it in others. Sometimes, being brave means accepting the shadows that come with the light. The words settled around Peregrine's heart like a warm cloak, emboldening their spirit with the knowledge that the fight for truth was a shared burden, not one they had to shoulder alone. As the urgency of their task churned in their hearts, they felt the moment shift, a palpable electricity crackling through the group. It was time to rise from the darkness, to step into the open, where the weight of their truth would no longer stay hidden. The air tasted of iron and possibility as Peregrine took a deep breath, their scarred brow furrowing with fierce determination. Let's do this, they declared, the words firm and resolute, an anchor in the storm of uncertainty. With the flickering torchlight guiding their path, they emerged from the tunnel, leaving behind the shadows of doubt. The wasteland stretched before them, a desolate expanse echoing with the ghosts of the past. But now, with each step forward, they carried the weight of unyielding resolve, ready to confront the truth that awaited them in the world above. The heart of the wasteland lay before Peregrine, a desolate battlefield where dreams had withered under the weight of betrayal. Jagged remnants of a once thriving town whispered secrets of lost lives, while the acrid scent of rusted metal hung thick in the air, mingling with the dust of forgotten memories. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the leaden sky, casting a pallor over the cracked earth that gleamed with shards of broken promises. As they stepped forward, heart-pound with a mix of fear and determination, the oppressive silence of the wasteland shattered with the distant et of Jareth Paxwood laughter, a sound as sharp as glass, dripping with smugness and certainty. Behind the wall of lies he had constructed, the antagonist awaited, a puppet master poised to reveal the final act of his sinister play. Peregrine's voice rang out, steady despite the tremor in their chest. "You think you're safe here, Jeff?" Behind your facade of prophecy and power, you're just a coward hiding from the truth. The words sliced through the air, igniting a flicker of surprise in Jareth's eyes. "Så uncertain would describe the Forions you saw." He leaned against a crumbling pillar, arms crossed, a cruel smile curving his lips. "Ah, the earnest journalist thinks they can unravel the threads of destiny. How quaint. You're just a footnote in my story, Peregrine." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of ozone, a storm brewing both outside and within. Ode. Peregrine stepped closer. Their allies array silently behind, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Your story is built on lies," Peregrine continued, their voice rising with fervor. "The prophecy you twisted was never meant for you to control. It belonged to the people, to those suffering under your tyranny." With each proclamation they felt the weight of their family legacy pressing upon their shoulders, the pain of loss fueling their resolve. Jareth's expression faltered for the brief moment, revealing a crack in his carefully constructed mask. It shifted uneasily, the air thick with the tension of unspoken truths. And Peregrine pressed on, emboldened by the stirrings of hope among their allies. "You think you've exposed me," Jareth said, his voice a low growl, but the tremor betrayed him.
You know nothing of what I've sacrificed.
"Nothing of my family loss." The words hung heavy, and Peregrine's heart clenched. This was the moment, the precipice where truth could either shatter or unite them. "I don't know, Jareth. I know it was your greed that stole the ore and buried your family legacy beneath it. But I also know you lost someone to this very same system. We are the same in that regard, driven by loss, yet you chose power over justice." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated by the distant rumble of thunder. The storm reflected their rising emotions, both raw and electric. Jareth's composure finally faltered, his facade cracking as he stared back at Peregrine, the weight of their words anchoring him. The allies behind Peregrine shifted, emboldened by their leader of bravery, the tension in the air palpable as they awaited the final strike. This was not just about the prophecy anymore. It was about redemption and the buried truths that would either bind them together or shatter their world even further. With a resolute breath, Peregrine stepped forward, knowing the time for secrets was over, and they were ready to uncover the heart of the matter. As Jareth's defenses crumbled, Peregrine felt a surge of power and purpose. The storm overhead unleashed a flurry of rain, washing away the remnants of deception, leaving an electric energy that promised change. Jareth's eyes flickered with doubt, the unsettling realization that his carefully woven lies were unraveling before him. With the rain lashing against their skin, Peregrine glanced at their allies, their faces a mixture of fear and hope, realizing together they could forge a new path from the wreckage. They took a deep breath, ready to confront, not just Jareth's deceit, but the very foundations of the world they had built. In that moment, the wasteland transformed from a desolate void to the stage for a reckoning, where truth would either rise or fall. At the edge of the wasteland, the abandoned lookout point rose sharply from the cracked earth, a solitary sentinel against the relentless winds that swept across the desolation. Peregrine Cleon stood at the precipice, gazing out over the once vibrant expanse now reduced to a somber tapestry of browns and grays, the remnants of a forgotten world. The sun hung low, casting long shadows that danced eerily over the rubble, while the acrid scent of dust filled the air, mingling with the faint edge of distant memories. They felt the cool breeze brush against the jagged scar on their brow, a reminder of battles fought and lost, and the weight of their journey pressed heavily against their chest. As the last echoes of chaos faded behind them, the horizon stretched vast and empty, inviting reflection and resolution. The gravel crunched softly underfoot as a familiar presence drew near. The wise mentor, Elara, stepping into the muted light. Her silhouette, framed by the fading sun, radiated a calm confidence that often steadied Peregrine's stormy thoughts. "You've come far, Peregrine," she said, her voice rich and melodic, brushing against the tension that lingered in the air. "The truth has a way of wooed first, before it sets us free. You felt that today, didn't?" Perfect. Rikke Godfrias Elisherpeli. Folkwitz. Martin Sprenerically Gispake Incursion of Rikke Godfrias screen. You felt that today, didn't? Para. John with me. Ribde. The Rockaday. And dinner to Sunny Island. The Brundenstein. When I can't for you looking there. We felt that today, didn't? Paraclick of Yang days remained fixed on the horizon, unwilling to break the spell of stillness around them. They nodded slowly, a mix of pride and sorrow swirling within, as the reality of their actions sank in. Elara continued, her eyes studying the horizon with that knowing glimmer. Tyranny thrives in shadows, but you've but a light, even if it flickers uncertainly. In that light, the community will find its strength again. You must be their voice, not just for the truth, but for hope. What you do with that power? The weight of her words tethered at Peregrine's thoughts, making the atmosphere charged with unspoken promises. They could feel the sense of purpose sparking within them, igniting the embers of resilience they thought had drowned in despair. "I'll rebuild, Elara, Peregrine," finally said, their voice steady but soft, breaking the stillness that hung heavy between them. "Every word I write will be a foundation, a call to arms against the silence that smothered us for too long. I won't let fear dictate our future anymore." Elara's expression shifted, pride lighting up her features, and she placed a firm hand on their shoulder, warmth radiating through the leather of Peregrine's jacket. In that moment, the promise of a new beginning solidified between them, a bond forged in truth and purpose. The sun dipped low, casting fiery hues across the wasteland, transforming the landscape into a surreal painting of loss and possibility. Peregrine took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill their lungs, mingling with a newfound determination that thrummed in their veins. As they turned to Elara, the vast emptiness behind them seemed to hum with potential, the horizon whispering of challenges yet to come. "Let head then," they said, a smile breaking through the remnants of uncertainty. "Their work to do, and every voice matters in this fight." Together they began the descent, the weight of the past lifting the move toward the future, ready to raise not just a voice, but a chorus of truth against the silence.